Horse Guards has never seen a parade like this. They've seen trooping the colour, they've seen beating the retreat. But tonight there's a huge military parade, and that's only the half of it. Lined up across Horse Guards at the moment, the military contingents and the mass bands. But beyond there, under the canopy leading to St. James's Park, a huge choir, 500 strong, from the cathedrals and choirs all over Britain have come here. 100-strong orchestra from the Royal Academy and Royal College of Music, directed by John Scott from St. Paul's Cathedral, playing music for the Royal Fireworks by Handel at the moment. And then waiting to play their part in the proceedings here this evening, the mass bands from the Royal Marines, from the Guards Division, from the Royal Air Force. And then the service contingents from all three services. The senior service, of course, at the far end of the line, the Royal Navy. Then all 17 regiments, of which the Queen Mother is Colonel-in-Chief, with their colours ready to parade, to be inspected, and to march past the Queen Mother later on when she arrives here on the parade ground. The Royal Air Force and the Women's Royal Air Force behind them there. And then representatives from the Commonwealth, from Australia with the distinctive hats, from Canada, and from New Zealand. And no parade, of course, complete without the two drum horses, Leonidas there with the Blues and Royals, and on the other side, Belisarius is also here on the parade ground. And at the far corner of Horse Guards, another addition, a tower of 8 bells to be rung by ringers of St. Martin in the Fields. And there, behind the mounted police of the Metropolitan Police, what looks like the beginning of a major military parade. There's armoured cars waiting, but it's not. It's the beginning of the civilian parade, which just starts with that military flourish. You can see the flags behind. They're the beginning of a procession of 4,500 people from some of the 300 or more organisations of which the Queen Mother is patron. They stretch down Birdcage Walk for 3/4 of a mile, 6,000 people in all, gathered here to celebrate the 90th birthday of the best-loved member of the royal family. The Queen Mother was born the youngest daughter of the Earl of Strathmore on the 4th of August, 1900. And she had a childhood spent in a close-knit family, Scottish aristocracy, but very much removed from public life. Her mother, the Countess, preferred the quiet of the countryside. And then, as a vivacious young girl in the early 20s, she met the second son of George V, Albert, who she married in 1923, accepting there'd be new responsibilities in the royal family, but not expecting the burden of monarchy. She had 2 daughters, Elizabeth, of course, the present Queen, and her sister Margaret. And then the abdication of Edward VIII changed her life completely, brought her husband to the throne as George VI, and a whole new era began. Britain was at war. She was winning universal affection for her courage and her cheerfulness, qualities that stayed with her through the death of her husband and her new role from 1952 as Queen Mother. A life which spans the century. And this evening, all the organizations that she's helped over those years as patron or president or colonel-in-chief have come here to speak for the whole nation in celebrating this, her 90th year. She once said to her daughter, the present Queen, "Your work is the rent you pay for the room you occupy on earth." And what a huge burden of work she's undertaken over the years. The great foreign tours, of course, on the one hand, before the war, to Canada and the United States and France, but then the countless presentations and speeches and dinners and visits. All the people here, 6,000 of them watching, as well as the 6,000 that are on the parade ground, are here to pay tribute and to thank her for what she's done. And they wait in silence for the arrival of the Queen Mother, who is notorious for being a little late. George V said of her, she couldn't really be on time. If she were, she'd be perfect, and how terrible that would be. But she very nearly is punctual to the second. There she is with Princess Margaret beside her in a barouche driven by Arthur Scholl, coming down the approach road past the citadel there on the right, covered with green ivy. onto Horse Guards. Escorted with a captain's escort of the Household Cavalry, 61 officers under Captain Richard Onslow. Princess Margaret there looking very cheerful. The Prince of Wales peering round the corner as they come on. But the Queen Mother, who is the star of this evening, in a very beautiful pale blue coat and hat. The Queen, incidentally, will not be here. She's leaving this parade for her mother so that all the attention is focused on her. The spotlight is on her. Princess Margaret and the Prince of Wales have come just to accompany her. They also won't be taking part in the proceedings except for this arrival here now on Horse Guards Parade. Pleased and excited with anticipation of what's to come, as well she might. She said she didn't want a fuss, and this is Britain's idea of not creating a fuss. She comes past the New Admiralty building there, her favourite grandson with her, who's paid many tributes to the role that she played in his life in preparing him for the ultimate burden of kingship. Her second daughter, Princess Margaret. The orchestra is playing Elgar's Imperial March as the Queen Mother comes round the final corner, pointing out some of the people who are gathered here to her daughter, Princess Margaret. Now, the hosts of this evening at Horse Guards are the Secretary of State for Defence and the Chief of the Defence Staff. And as the Queen Mother descends from the barouche, they'll be the first two to greet her. Tom King, Secretary of State of Defence there, and Marshal of the Royal Air Force Sir David Craig, Chief of the Defence Staff. Very simple, minimum of formality. And Prince Charles there and Princess Margaret will be led away to one side as the Queen Mother goes up onto the dais and the order for the royal salute and the national anthem is given. Colonel Andrew Parker Bowles, who's Colonel of the Household Cavalry, on his 18-year-old horse Bountiful, giving the orders on this, his last big parade, commanding the Household Cavalry.
Your Majesty, your parade is present and ready for your inspection. Now.
Bountiful very slightly restless. Bountiful's been on parade all day, trying to get used to the noise of the music and the bands here, and is due to retire tomorrow to the countryside after 18 years' service, but is frisky as though it was his first time on parade. The Queen Mother now goes back into the barouche, escorted by Tom King there, for the inspection of the troops that are here on parade. And the first music that we shall hear now from Sir Hubert Parry, "I Was Glad When They Said Unto Me," which was composed for the coronation of Edward VII in 1902, words from the Book of Common Prayer of 1662, and was also played at the coronation of George VI. So Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, will remember it from that occasion. It includes the famous passage, "Vivat, Vivat," which they sing to "Vivat Regina Elizaveta." Well, she starts inspecting the audience who've come here and giving a wave. Mrs. Thatcher, the Prime Minister, Dennis Thatcher on her left there, applauding the Queen Mother as she goes past. The Prime Minister's stand, which she uses for trooping the colour as well. And now she comes to the first ranks of the Royal Navy. Be a moment to remind you that a charming great-grandmother of 90 years old may seem to you out of place inspecting the military, but her family has a long and proud Scottish military tradition. They go back to Robert the Bruce, to the Welsh leader Owain Glendower, to George Washington and General Robert E. Lee, so they're no stranger to things military. Sir Hubert Parry's music. I was glad when they said unto me, composed for the coronation. And the tour of inspection is now almost over. Twilight in Cardiff, those old familiar greys, one Hanoverian, one an Oldenbury, steadily driven by Arthur Scholl. And with the commander-in-chief, or the commander rather, of the parade, Colonel Parker Bowles, escorting her, the Queen Mother comes back towards the dais at the front here of Horse Guards. The inspection over, to be followed by the march past. Princess Margaret watching from the Duke of Wellington's old office when he was C&C of the Armed Forces above the Horse Guards. And the Queen Mother sprightly out of the barouche. Tom King, again Secretary of State for Defence, takes her back to the dais for the next stage of the command.
The parade will march past the Royal Navy leading.
Royal Navy leading then. A Royal Navy colour party, an escort first of all with the Queen's colour, and it's carried by Tim Howarth, who comes from the same ship as the Duke of York, HMS Campbellton. The colour party mounted by Flag Officer Portsmouth. And behind them, HMS Ark Royal, from the Royal Navy's newest aircraft carrier, which was launched by the Queen Mother in June 1981. The music changes to Hearts of Oak, as it will change for every contingent that marches past the Queen Mother. Behind Ark Royal, HMS Resolution, one of the Polaris nuclear submarines, also launched by the Queen Mother in September 1966. And behind them, the Women's Royal Naval Service, under the command of First Officer Jill Aitkenhead, who may well be remembering the moment many years back when she danced at the Braemar Games and nearly kicked a claymore at the Queen Mother and was so upset she had to be given tea and sandwiches by the Queen Mother herself afterwards. Well, here she is, leading the Women's Royal Navy Service past. And then the music will change again for the Army. First of all, the Queen's Dragoon Guards, the senior cavalry regiment of the line, with the Radetzky March. Then the senior light cavalry regiment of the British Army, the Queen's Own Hussars. And after them, to God bless the Prince of Wales, the 9th, 12th Royal Lancers. Queen Mother's been their Colonel-in-Chief since 1960. And the Kingsmen, for the King's Regiment from Liverpool and Manchester, who proudly fought in almost every engagement of the British Army for many centuries. Rule Britannia played for the Royal Anglian Regiment, who were given the Britannia Cap Badge by Queen Anne in 1707. After them, the Light Infantry, which the Queen Mother has been connected with since 1927. Normally they go at 140 paces a minute. They're a bit slower today. Highland Laddie, the Black Watch. For over 50 years, the Queen Mother's been their Colonel-in-Chief and has strong family connections with them. And then here's a health unto your majesty, very suitably for the Royal Army Medical Corps, who hold more VCs than any other regiment or corps in the army. The Lass of Richmond Hill, for the Women's Royal Army Corps. And And then the Territorial Army, the Royal Yeomanry, first set up as a cavalry in 1794 with the Farmer's Boy. British Grenadiers for the London University Officer Training Corps, which was set up in the South African War in 1908. And the music of Nancy Dawson for the Inns of Court and City Yeomanry, who look after communications for the headquarters staff of London District. And now the drums just fill in the time as we wait for the Royal Air Force, who'll come past to the famous Royal Air Force March, which you'll certainly recognize, led by the colour of the Central Flying School, carried by Flight Lieutenant Simon Hamilton from RAF Scampton, Lincolnshire. And later, in this tribute, the Royal Air Force will be providing the Battle of Britain flypast of the Spitfire and the Hurricane and the Lancaster. And the Royal Naval Historic Flight will be providing a Swordfish, and there'll be other aircraft and helicopters in the grand finale. Central Flying School trains all the flying instructors for the RAF, the Navy and the Army, the Women's Royal Air Force and the London University Air Squadron. And then after a little pause, the music changes to music for the Commonwealth. When the Queen Mother was born, it was the Empire. Waltzing Matilda for the Royal Australian Army Medical Corps, of which she's been Colonel-in-Chief since 1953. Then the Canadian. Alouette are played for the Black Watch of Canada, the Royal Highland Regiment. And behind them, the Toronto Scottish, recruited in the Toronto area, set up in 1915 as the 75th Battalion. And the Canadian Forces Medical Services, of which the Queen Mother's been Colonel-in-Chief since 1977. And the rear brought up with the Maori marching song by the Royal New Zealand Army Medical Corps. This is the first time that they've paraded in front of their Colonel-in-Chief. The Queen Mother clearly delighted with this parade and clearly aware that the New Zealanders are here for the first time and have come all this way for her 90th birthday parade. Now the music changes to Soldiers of the Queen, and the civilian procession is about to come on to Horse Guards, and during it the bands will play music from right across the century of the Queen Mother's life, starting with Soldiers of the Queen through the First World War songs, Hang Out the Washing on the Siegfried Line, the 20s, the 30s, the Charleston, Underneath the Arches. They've been given the words, and the audience here have the words, with a special injunction to those who learnt them when they were in the services, please to sing the proper and not the improper version here this evening. So the procession starts with the 4 Metropolitan Police horses, nobody quite knows how this parade will work out, because 4,500 civilians, even though they've practiced it twice now, once this morning and once just now this afternoon when it was much hotter, it's quite cool here now with a slight breeze on Horse Guards, which is making it easier. Chelsea pensioners in the background from the Royal Hospital Chelsea applauding, and the grey from the Queen's own hussars, given to them by the Queen Mother, Peninsula, who carries the replicas of the kettle drums captured from the French by the 3rd Hussars at the Battle of Dettingen in 1743. Swiftly followed by the very noisy armoured cars, 2 scimitars, 2 strikers and 2 scorpions from the 9th, 12th Royal Lancers. Recognize the tune of Hang Out the Washing on the Siegfried Line now being sung. People waving and applauding as they go past. And this parade comes down that side past number 10 Downing Street before turning in front of the Queen Mother where she is on the dais. The 6 armoured cars followed by 8 armoured cars from the Territorial Army, the Royal Yeomanry, who are engaged in armoured reconnaissance. But that is all we'll see of military might, because for the rest of the parade it's veterans and representatives from service organisations and hospitals and civil organisations, led off by the Royal British Legion Women's Section with 75 banners there in gold and blue and the Union flag in the front, representing organisations from all over Britain, Aberdeen and Edinburgh in particular representing the Scottish section. Take Me Back to Dear Old Blighty being sung now as Safa comes into view, and they've got various excitements, a Boer War horse-drawn van on the left there, and a lorry and a little posy being given by Fergus, who's a 3-year-old, and his sister Octavia to the Queen Mother. 2 little posies, and she holds them up. I think they'll probably be the only people allowed to do that, because the parade would grind to a halt if everybody gave the Queen Mother the flowers they'd like to on this occasion. Safa, who look after the families of servicemen. Spread a little happiness now. Vivian Ellis from the 20s. The Royal Liverpool Seamen Orphan Institution. 12 dependent children there with flags going past. Women's Land Army, the Women's Royal Naval Service Benevolent Trust is there, the Sailors Children's Society, and the old contemptibles in this van. To qualify, you have to have fought in the First World War between the 5th of August and the 22nd of November 1914. There are 9 of them here. There are only 130 in the whole world. They wave there to the Queen, part of Sir John French's contemptible, as the Kaiser called it, little army, the small army before the larger force was sent over. They on the left, and away to the right, the Sailors and Children's Society, League of Remembrance, Friends of the Imperial War Museum are there in their van. And now the Badgers, those tiny little children, the youngest members of the St. John Ambulance Brigade. You have to leave that when you're 10 years old. You can't join it till you're 6. And as they go past, they're all carrying these signs, not directed towards us, but towards the Queen Mother, so that she can tell who it is that's going past. There's a big contingent now of St. John Ambulance Brigade and St. Andrews Ambulance Association from Scotland. And the 1929 ambulance I've just caught sight of there, called Sympathy, a Model A Ford. Cost £250 when it was new, beautifully polished now, and no doubt worth a great deal more. So that's the St. John Ambulance and the St. Andrews Ambulance, and next comes the British Red Cross and the Australian Red Cross. And they've chosen to tell the story of the Red Cross. Dressed in uniform, led by Major Charlie Graham, who's representing Colonel Lloyd Lindsay, who went to Paris in the Franco-Prussian War and gave donations of food and help, and Henri Dunant, the Swiss businessman who started. And then the Girl Guides. The royal family's very keen on the Girl Guides. Queen Elizabeth and Princess Margaret were both guides, and the Queen Mother's taken an interest in them all her life. In their new, rather informal uniforms, there was some controversy about those blue peaked hats. And the conservative clothes of the Girls' Brigade. There are 220 of them in uniform, a Christian organization which teaches and helps girls to follow a Christian life. Banners you see in the dark corners of parish churches the length and breadth of the land. The Mothers' Union with these beautiful embroidered banners, 3 million members, 45 of them on parade here, 45 of the organizations. The Sandringham Women's Institute is here as well. And a birthday cake, doesn't look edible to me, from the Women's Royal Voluntary Service, who provided, incidentally, tea and buns for every man jack on this parade. They've been doing a terrific job behind the scenes as well. Happy birthday from the voluntary services. And Toc H there on the left, who've been providing the stewards. The Queen Mother used to make Christmas puddings with them for former servicemen. And the Young Women's Christian Association is there as well. And then we come to all those hospital organizations and nursing organizations with which the Queen is connected. Royal College of Nursing, the Queen Victoria Hospital at East Grinstead, Brompton and National Heart Hospital, the Royal Gwent Hospital, the West Cumberland Hospital. I can't name them all, there are so many of them. Among them, the College of Speech Therapists, to which the Queen Mother is indebted because it was through speech therapy that she helped her husband George VI overcome a severe stammer before he became king. Laden races now, being sung right round horse carts. Bernie Winters at the bottom left there, dressed as Bud Flanagan, which he played in the West End show. And if you can just catch sight of them, tiny little Bud Flanagans hidden by those signs demonstrating the ghastly things that can happen to you. There they are. Bud Flanagan hats and coats, and they're representing the Bud Flanagan Leukemia Fund. They were rather hoping they'd go past to the tune of Underneath the Arches, but we haven't quite reached that yet. The Centre for Policy on Aging. Well, they can take a lesson if they look on the dais to their right. A skeleton, I don't know how that got in there, from the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital. And now we come to some of the animals that are favourites. Desert Orchid there. The Queen Mother saw his famous victory in the 1989 Cheltenham Gold Cup. And then there are her own horses there, just in front, the Argonaut and Special Cargo, ridden today by Kevin Mooney and by Gerald Oxley, both big winners for the Queen Mother. And then the famous Poultry Club, which we've heard so much about, the Buff Orpington chickens in a handcart with 6 chickens, meant to be looking like a medieval poultryman going to market. Royal Veterinary College with Border Collies and Labradors and Boxers and Springers. The fishermen there for the Salmon and Trout Association with their fishing rods and a rather incongruous guardsman marching beside them. And the Dachshunds, 6 of them on parade, no corgis, but Dachshunds, which the Queen Mother is also fond of, and the royal family have a cross between a corgi and a Dachshund, which they know as a dorgie, but there are no dorgies here. Rose of England they play now, as the farming interests go past. The Aberdeen Angus Bull, Rawburn Duke. They said rather optimistically that the bull might recognise the Queen Mother because she'd been at Smithfield when he won a prize. And then on parade on the right, 2 horses, Inniskillin and Copenhagen, who was injured in the 1982 Hyde Park bomb attack, who we didn't expect to be here. They said a moment ago he was getting too stiff here, but he has been brought out on parade. Now fully recovered, though he's still got some shrapnel in his neck. Tiny children on ponies behind. from the Shetland Pony Stud Book Society, and 2 Shetland ponies there. Very smartly turned out. So this procession goes on, stretching right round Horse Guards and still going very smoothly. There's a slight pause coming. Well, it's not surprising they get a slight muddle. I think what's actually happened is that the front of the parade has caught up with the middle of the parade, so they've got slightly caught up. Anyway, everybody's very happy. They're singing The White Cliffs of Dover from the Second World War. Approaching now various groups from a mixture of charities. Well, there's a good attempt at singing. Not everybody's supposed to be singing. And now at Haddo House, amateur operatics from Aberdeen and the Queen Alexandra Hospital Home and the Florence Nightingale Trust Aid and Sickness and the youth clubs of the UK and a great mass. And somewhere there among them, the Douglas Bader Foundation, set up as a memorial to Sir Douglas Bader. The black car behind, the 1962 Albus, which has 2 young lads, Campbell Coe, who was 14, Richard Whitehead, 13. Both amputated limbs, one a talented skier and the other representing Great Britain in athletics. Run, Rabbit, Run, being played now. Ex-Services Mental Welfare Group there, and the Trinity Hospice from Clapham on the right, with Young's Brewery Dray. One of the big horses that clop around South London, carrying beer to all the pubs, today carrying the Trinity Hospice. Very handsome sight. The new circus troupe from MENCAP, who perform all over the country. They provide opportunities for mentally handicapped people. SPCC children dressed up there as, would it be tulips or geraniums? They're meant to be both tulips and geraniums. Anyway, geraniums, 10 of them dressed up because that's the flower that the Greater London Fund for the Blind use on their fundraising days. Research into the aging, you just saw there. You see the huge range of organizations which the Queen Mother is involved in. Almost all of them will be asking for her to come once or twice a year. Here, the Royal School of Needlework, one of her favorites, carrying some examples of their work. Now, this is the Queen Mary's Clothing Guild. And on the right there, the Royal School of Needlework. Well, they look pretty much the same in the grey boaters, or the brown boaters, the Royal School of Needlework, who made the Queen Mother's coronation robe and made the present Queen's coronation robe, and incidentally renovated many of the banners that are on display here. The Automobile Association gets a look in, 5 years younger than the Queen Mother, and they're carrying a Daimler Landaulette, which George VI and Queen Elizabeth used between 1947 and 1949. She'll recognize that car. She rode in it many times. Barnardo's Frank Bruno, familiar figure, carrying a child. That organization used to be called Barnardo's Homes, helping children and young people with special needs. John Conte on the right of the screen there. Faith Brown and the Blue Peter team among them. Yellow teddy bears from the Children's Country Holidays Fund. They look rather middle-aged teddy bears, it has to be said. Well, some of them look rather middle-aged teddy bears, but anyway, and they pause to give a wave to the Queen Mother as they go past. And the maypole from the Royal Wolverhampton School. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe, and a young gentleman with a flag who knew what to do from the Children's Society. Still the guardsmen you see there at the bottom of the picture, they're desperately trying to keep this parade moving on time. And I must say, compared with the rehearsal, I have to tell you, they're doing a very good job indeed. Jerry Hall there, dressed as a half-timbered building for the National Trust. She's dressed as Speak Hall, no connection, you might say, from Liverpool. And also there, Angela Thorne and Susan Hampshire for the Gardens. Susan Hampshire you can't see, but her banner is there. There's Susan Hampshire with the wonderful bonnet, curtsying as she goes past, and the most beautiful dress, the 18th century dress, with maize and topiary giving a deep curtsy. And then the coast, represented by Neptune. Tall figure of Donald Standen, 6'4". Those are representing the interests of the National Trust. The Carney School of Dancing, which taught the Queen, Princess Margaret, Princess Anne, and Prince Charles. I'm not sure it didn't even teach your commentator a step or two. And then the British Sporting Art Trust with the original 19th century mail coach driven by John Parker here, evoking the period of oil paintings of dashing coaches with horns playing, going through snowstorms that we all have on our Christmas cards. Joseph's amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat there from the Dundee University Operatic Society, carrying his coat of many colours. Brewery Dray on the right there. Two horses from the RADA and Royal Victoria Foundation. And their coach decorated in York roses and the Queen Mother's racing colours. All dressed up and nowhere to go, the Royal National Lifeboat Institution with a brand new 21-foot lifeboat, the men coming from Thurso and Hartlepool, Dover, Treasure Bay. Queen Mother has named 7 lifeboats, and the last one, only last year, near the Castle of May at Thurso, which was called the Royal National Lifeboat Queen Mother. Now the gentler arts, Chelsea Physic Garden, the London Gardens Society, and the National Gardens Scheme. The Queen Mother being a very keen gardener who tours these gardens, takes cuttings for her own houses. London Caithness Association, dear to her heart, which looks after Caithnessians who live in London and get into difficulties. The Castle of May, the Queen's favourite residence, is there. And among the other arts, cookery and food. 90 chefs and waiters from the Cookery and Food Association. You wouldn't think it, but inside there is the Reverend Richard Woodham, disguised as Snap the Dragon from the Norwich Museum. One of those costumes that dates back to medieval mystery plays of St. George and the Dragon. Sutton's Hospital and Charterhouse is there with them, the Textile Benevolent Association, the United Society for Christian Literature. Then the institutions. The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and the Confederation of the Cinque Ports. Now, the Queen Mother is Lord Warden and Admiral of the Cinque Ports and Constable at Dover Castle, and there are the 14 mayors, 5 ports of Hastings, New Romney, Hythe, Dover and Sandwich, the 2 ancient towns of Winchelsea and Rye, and several incorporate members. And then behind them, in the carriages, the city livery companies, of which the Queen Mother is honorary freeman. They include the grocers, the merchant tailors, the barbers, the butchers, the musicians, and the shipwrights. And immediately behind them, those long grey wigs on the left, the Honourable Society of the Middle Temple. The Queen is master of the bench and has been since 1944, when she went there in some danger from doodlebugs to be installed as a member. Lloyd's of London on the right-hand side, the waiters who used to run the coffee house that was the origin of Lloyd's. Then the very distinguished figures from the Royal Society in their robes. Hosts of professors, more than you care to think of, from all the sciences of Britain, founded in 1660, never been seen on a parade like this before. And the Victoria and George Cross Association. Victoria Cross, the Supreme Award for military heroism, the George Cross for civilian gallantry. 32 of them on parade here today. A large proportion of those still left alive, 46 VCs and 74 GCs. The 2 senior crosses. Very gallant band going past, including Rear Admiral Geoffrey Place, who was in Midget Submarines, who's now the chairman of the association. And now there's a breath for the boys of the Old Brigade. Under the command of the Captain of Invalids, Lieutenant Colonel Brian Ayres, formerly of the King's Regiment, at the front of the marching party there, 50 Chelsea pensioners, with between them 1,000 years' service to the colours, a total age of 3,750 years. Now, there's one thing to be said about these Chelsea pensioners. Seen from the Queen Mother's dais, she must be thinking to herself, Chelsea pensioners get a little younger every day, because not one of these pensioners is as old as the Queen Mother herself. The oldest man on parade is 84. So the Chelsea pensioners march off, and the sound of the pipes for the first time is heard on Horse Guards. The massed pipes and drums of the Irish Guards, the Black Watch, the London Scottish, the Black Watch of Canada, and the Toronto Scottish Regiment, playing the Corbeens trimmed with blue. break into a slow march, the Highland Cradle Song. Now they break back into the quick march, the Queen Elizabeth's March. And among the pipers playing here from the London Scottish, Pipe Major John Spore, who retires on the Queen's 90th birthday, the 4th of August, but who still now plays at Clarence House, the Queen Mother being particularly fond of the sound of the pipes. The senior director of music, Wing Commander Barry Hingley, has written a special birthday song, Sounds of the Pipes. It's been released as a single for Service Charities, which he plays now. Sounds of the Pipes, the words and music written by him. And after sounds of the pipes, the pipers take a rest. And the mass bands and mounted bands have their turn for Crown Imperial, written for George VI's coronation in 1937 by Sir William Walton. It looks as though the whole parade ground is in movement, as the captain's escort in the far distance come onto the parade ground, ready for their march past, as the mounted bands of the Household Cavalry go in one direction, and on foot the mass bands of the Royal Air Force and the Marines and the Guards march back towards the dais where the Queen Mother is. Walton's Crown Imperial. Queen Mother obviously very appreciative of it, and Barry Hingley, who has been conducting this parade, you may have noticed a moment ago, has no music in front of him. He does this entirely from memory. The parade ground is now clear and ready for the march past of the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, who in a moment or two later on in the parade are going to fire a 21-gun salute. The parade is brought to attention and to present because the guns of the King's Troop count as colours, so the whole parade comes to the salute for them. The mounted bands of the Household Division have been moved off the parade ground now, and indeed all the animals will be taken off before the gun salute for obvious reasons. But first we have this march past. The Royal Artillery's slow march is the music, and led by Major Vere Nicol. This troop, which was kept going by George VI after the war, when they became fully mechanized, he said that they should still have a traditional troop that could fire guns. All the guns that they're parading today were used in the First World War. They weigh 1.5 tons each. And they're called the King's Troop, named after George VI, because at his death in 1922, the present Queen said she'd like them to keep the name that he had given them. As the King's Troop go into the evening shadows, the side of the parade ground, there's a strong sun now. The sky here is almost completely clear. The threat of rain, which we'd thought might come, seems to have vanished. It's become a completely clear evening. The sun's so bright, the Queen Mother occasionally having to shield her eyes to see. The regimental slow march now of the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals. First, the Blues and Royals, with their red plumes, the captain's escort, led by Captain Richard Onslow, 61 strong, the whole escort. The troops that add such luster to these ceremonial occasions. The Life Guards, who've had over 3 centuries of service as a bodyguard to the sovereign. And a farrier with his ceremonial axe in the rear, as always.
Parade shoulder! Up!
The King's Troop getting ready to fire their salute, which is going to be part of the finale, in which I can't tell you everything is going to be sounding off. There are bells and guns and singing and orchestras and bands, and the fly past of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight and others. And it's hoped that there'll be a glorious cacophony of sound as the final part of this tribute to the Queen Mother. The cavalry medley is played as Sir John Mills, 82-year-old, star of many service movies like In Which We Serve, Morning Departure, The Coded Story, a friend of the Queen Mother, comes to make an address to her.
Your Majesty, it is a great honor to welcome you here on this unique occasion. It is indeed unique, for no one ever held such a place in the heart of the nation. Earlier this year, you expressed a wish that for your 90th birthday, there should be no fuss. I'm sorry to say, ma'am, that this is one royal command which has been blatantly disobeyed, not only by the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, and all of your Majesty's regiments, but by the many thousands of people here today. They represent more than 300 organizations which have the honor to enjoy your patronage and special interest. We know that they have been immensely encouraged by the knowledge that you have not only given your name to grace their endeavors, but also a lifetime of love and care and time and energy in the service of others. So we are all here, dear ma'am, to say thank you and to wish you with all our love a very, very happy birthday. Let the bells ring out.
Swordfish, escorted by 4 Royal Navy Sea King helicopters. Now, after another round of gunfire, building up to the 21 guns. Pomp and circumstance, number 1 by Elga. And the Battle of Britain fight, the Spitfire, the Hurricane, and in the center, the Lancaster bomber. from the Central Flying School complete the flight past. The final peal of bells and the final gunfire, the 7 shots to complete the 21 rounds of the Royal Salute. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother.
I would like to take this opportunity of thanking from my heart those who are on Horse Guards today to join in celebrating my birthday. It is a great delight to me to see the members of the 3 services, including those from the Commonwealth, that they should be present. I also welcome most warmly representatives of so many organizations of which I'm patron or with which I'm otherwise associated. Through the years, I have watched and admired the great work they are all doing. Some have come long distances to be here, and I am deeply touched that they should have gone to such trouble to join in this splendid gathering. To you all, and not least to those who organized this tribute, I offer my warmest gratitude for making this such a marvelous birthday occasion.
Three cheers for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Hip hip! Hip hip! Hip hip! Replace headdress. Shot!
Oh, the cheers so loud that Colonel Parker Bowles, in command of the parade, his own horse Bountiful, was bucking away. But now, the national anthem.
Great royal salute! Present arms! Parade! Salute! Arms!
Flying the Royal Standard, coming in under the arch onto Horse Guards, the car in which the Queen Mother will leave the parade ground, not without having driven slowly round as a gesture of thanks and to say goodbye to the 6,000 people who've been taking part in this parade and the 6,000 people who make up the audience. As the band plays first, here's a health unto Her Majesty. Tom King, the Secretary of State of Defence, the host on this occasion, on the Queen Mother's left as they drive away in this open car. They'll go right round this parade ground before coming back to Horse Guards itself and going under the arch. So everybody will have a chance to see her as she goes round. And to remember the 90 years which we celebrate her birthday on the 4th of August this year.